Hello, everybody. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you. Hello.
I'm supposed to stand over here, right?
I think we need to plug in the speaker.
Yeah, I am.
You're good.
Okay.
Oh, no, it's plugged in. Yeah. Okay.
We good?
Who doesn't know? Hi, everybody.
Hi.
If you don't know me, most of you do, I think. My name is Kristen Barfield. I'm a little bit crazy, but I mean, you love me. You love your names.
Yes.
And I live in Grace Creek, and I've kind of been consumed with this whole GenX thing, and I've noticed starting years ago that we keep getting thrown under the bus, and we're still being thrown under the bus like every single day. Every time I comment on some kind of post on the Facebook page, the GenX Facebook page, if it's something related to real estate, I pretty much get called all kinds of names and told that I don't care about anybody, I'm just out for the money, I'm just trying to protect myself and other agents, which I am, but you know, I like to protect the consumer too, but it's just something that we definitely need to be more aware about and much more careful about, because the area has gotten so big, you guys, I mean, your head's gonna spin when I show you the new map. It's crazy. Well, not since your last time. You were just here like a month ago, right? Yeah. So, is anybody has not heard of GenX, doesn't know what GenX is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Very, very cool.
Brand new agent?
Yeah,
Okay.
both of us.
Okay, what area of the county do you live in?
I live in Raeford.
Okay, so that makes a little bit of sense. Most people who haven't been working in and around this area very well may not have heard about it. The thing's not working.
It's. Oh, no.
Help me, Heather. Okay, thanks. I'll just point at Heather when I need the slide
Don't
change.
shoot in my eyes. I already can't see. I have cataracts.
Okay, so this is just a pretty little graphic that I threw up here. It's the chemical structure of GenX. GenX is one of about 5,000-6,000 man-made chemicals collectively known in a group called Pfas, and that Pfas stands for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. You might hear PFAA, you might hear PFOS, you might hear PFOA, you might hear PMPA. You'll hear a lot of little acronyms like that, and they're all PFAS. They are commonly found in nonstick cookware, popcorn bags, fast food wrappers, firefighting foam, all kinds of stuff. Basically anything that you can think of.
Did you do that?
Did I?
Yeah, because I did.
Okay. Basically anything you can think of that has a water repellent coating on it. Umbrellas, jackets, tents, sleeping bags, like literally anything you can think of that has some kind of water repellent or grease repellent or non-stick coating. Probably got a PFAS in it. PFAS are called forever chemicals because they do not break down under normal natural circumstances. It takes chemical processes and or thousands of degrees to break these chemicals down into, you know, different parts to get them to break down naturally. They just, you know, that's what makes them so water repellent and so resistant, is because of their chemical makeup. At this point, they're found in the blood of over 97% of all Americans, and I would probably say that has to do with every developed country in the world. Probably has about that same number. We all have some concentration of it in our blood. It's found in drinking water at this point in 49 states. It's all over the place.
So what state is it on? That's where we want to go.
Alaska.
Maybe. So I thought this was just kind of interesting, so I threw it in here. See, pointer's working. Thank you, Heather. I had Jimmy John's for lunch. They tested 9 paper items from Jimmy John's. 100% of them tested positive for fluorine. This does not necessarily mean that it has PFAS in it, but it's very likely that if it tests positive for the fluorine, it's a water repellent, grease repellent type coating, it's probably got PFAS in it, 100%. So the paper that my sandwich was wrapped in for lunch today had PFAS in it. Arby's has actually low. Carl's Jr., look, they're pretty healthy. Culver's, Domino's, Jimmy John's, 100%. Quiznos, 100%. Taco Time, I have no idea what Taco Time is. I've never heard of Taco Time.
It's kind of like Taco Bell, but it's attached to a gas station. We have them over again.
All right. Known health effects of PFAS. Now, I want to point out about this one is that GenX specifically, you're going to hear a lot of people talking about GenX when they're referring to PFAS as a whole. Most people don't know that GenX is part of a larger group called PFAS chemicals. So you're going to hear a lot of people talking about just GenX, but just know when you hear GenX, think of the whole group, because that's most of the time what they're talking about. We don't know much about GenX specifically or any of these, what they call emerging contaminants, which are, they call them emerging because they're new to us. We don't know anything about them. Very little is known about GenX or any of the other chemicals that are being used today. What they used back in the day, they've since phased out, is PFOA and PFOS. PFOA and PFOS were what they first started using back in the 40s and 50s to make Teflon coating for your pots and pans. We do know a lot about PFOA and PFOS. So this chart is based on what we know about PFOA and PFOS. The claim is that, excuse me, the claim is that GenX and some of these newer chemicals are safer than PFOA and PFOS. That may be the case, but safer doesn't always mean safe. We don't know yet. Nobody knows. So you've got high cholesterol, thyroid, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, immune problems, ulcerative colitis, decreased kidney function, kidney disease, impaired sperm motility, time of pregnancy, preeclampsia, lower birth weight in babies, kidney cancer, testicular cancer, and then you see everything in bold is pretty much widely accepted. There's a lot of evidence showing that it does cause these conditions. And that's changed, a lot of that has changed since 2018 because of everything that's coming out about PFAS. And we're not the only part of the country that's having a problem like this. You're probably going to start hearing more and more about it as the years go on, because like I said, it's everywhere. Sweden did a study on female reproductive effects, and they found that women who were drinking contaminated water were 2.18 times more likely to be diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome, 1.28 times more likely to be diagnosed with uterine, I can't even say that word, leiomyoma. I know I've heard of quite a few young women. I know one family in particular that the mom and all 4 daughters have PCOS. And they've lived in Grace Creek their whole life. You know, until more studies are done, we have no idea if it's 100% attributable to GenX and Pfas contamination in the water, but kind of makes you wonder. And I have links here to all of these studies so that you guys can, if you know, having trouble sleeping, you can go read them or something. And I did this because I was curious, and I thought you all might be curious too. I found this little graphic that talks about the half-life of PFAS in blood, which PFOS is 5.4 years. And I started thinking, okay, 5.4 years, but how long is that compared to other things that we know a little bit more about? Well, the half-life of cocaine is 2 days. That's pretty significant more time in your bloodstream than even cocaine. Caffeine is 5 hours, Tylenol, 2 to 3 hours. Heroin is 3 minutes. Marijuana, I couldn't get any concrete evidence on that one. I don't know. I heard like 5 hours on some things, and then some was like 11 to 13 days. I don't know. But I just thought that was interesting.
Right, question.
To see. Yes.
So it says half-life, so if it was a whole life, would you just double all that? And I'm not being funny, I'm being serious.
No, I'm not scientifically minded enough to explain half-life, but okay, go for it.
So the way half-lives work is that's a half-life. So then you would divide that by 2, and then divide that number by 2, and then divide that by 2. It's kind of almost like carbon dating.
It's kind of like the way it works itself out of your
Yeah.
bloodstream. Like if you had half of if you took, and this might sound like completely crazy, if you took 1 gram of cocaine, that probably seems like a whole lot, I don't know. But, and then in 2 days, there would be a half gram
Right.
in your bloodstream.
And then another 2 days.
And then another 2 days would be
a quarter.
quarter gram,
Okay.
And then another 2 days and 8.
right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, cool. I just thought that was interesting. It stays in your blood pretty good. And then this is, of course, we don't know anything about GenX. They know enough about GenX, but that's their best guess for GenX is 32 days. So how does it get into, how did this problem come about? Well, everybody knows we used to have DuPont down there off 87, right on the Bladen County line. DuPont spun off another company called Chemours, and for the PFAS and Teflon related manufacturing, they spun off, gave all of that to the company called Chemours, basically so they could just write off their liabilities for all of it. It gets really complicated. Chemours is now suing DuPont for misrepresenting the amount of liability that they were going to have in relation to this problem. The state of North Carolina is now suing Chemours, DuPont, and like 5 other companies that have to do with DuPont and different forms DuPont has taken over the last 70 years, however long it's been. So this is the main way that we're having this contamination is because they were dumping their wastewater into the river. You've got land application of biosolids. You've got any type of water that goes into say you're on a well, but you're on sewer. You're not on septic. You're one of those weird areas that you're still on well, but you're on sewer. You've got your wastewater going into the sewer. All that sewer water and everything goes into the wastewater treatment plant up by the botanical gardens, thank you. And they condense all the solids that are in their wastewater down into what they call sludge. And they take that sludge and they dehydrate it and they sell it off to farmers. About 50% of all the sludge that, yeah, it's pretty gross. About 50% of all the sludge that is collected is sold off to agricultural farms and everything else. They use it to replenish nutrients and everything in the soil. So then if that sludge is contaminated with PFAS, then you've got it spreading all over these large areas that farmers are spreading it all over, their farms. You've got wastewater, like up in Sanford in 2019, they had a big spike of PFAS coming into their wastewater. Well, their wastewater gets cleaned and then gets put right back into the Cape Fear River. They don't have any way of filtering out PFAS chemicals. So all that PFAS that was in their wastewater went right back into the river, upstream of us. You got firefighting foam from military bases, airports, and other sources. Around Seymour Johnson, there's a big area around Seymour Johnson, because it's an Air Force base. They got planes coming in there, lots of firefighting foam, lots of stuff like that. Landfill, anything that goes into the landfill, it has PFAS in it. If it's, landfills are supposed to be lined, they don't always work. And there's, a lot of times there's runoff from landfills, you get that too. Now, all of these water issues are what we're dealing with a little bit, but mostly these types of contamination is what is happening to New Hanover County, Brunswick County, Wilmington, Leland. All of their municipal water supplies have been contaminated mostly because of Chemours dumping directly into the river. Now, our problem is mostly due to air emissions. We don't pull water directly from the Cape Fear River down there. PwC pulls it, miles upstream from the Cape Fear River. But our wells are contaminated because we have, there was so much air emissions coming out, like thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds of this stuff coming out. And it runs primarily in a northeast, southwest direction. You'll see with a couple of maps I'm showing that kind of shows that how the wind and everything takes it up to the northeast mostly. And then it deposits either by rain or by pine trees. The sap pulls it in, and then when the pine cones and the pine needles fall and they decompose, they release the PFAS into the ground. And then that gets into our groundwater and is uptaken from our wells. There are other ways too, but that's the most of the reason why wells are contaminated in Grace Creek, Cedar Creek, Stedman now, all that. Just a quick history. I usually go into the history a little bit more, but I don't think that's really needed for this class. I mean, it's been around for a long time. They started making nonstick coatings way back in the 40s and 50s, and then they changed. 1999 is when all this stuff came out in Parkersburg, West Virginia. That was about PFOS and PFOA around the DuPont plant there. Huge lawsuit. The movie Dark Waters is based off the Parkersburg, West Virginia DuPont thing. There's also a movie called The Devil We Know, which is a really good one to watch if you're interested in this kind of stuff. So the consent order, back in February of 2019, we finally got a consent order pushed through with Chemours and DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, that said that they were going to start testing around the plant. And every well that they found that exceeds the limit, what the limit is set, it's kind of an arbitrary, they have reasons for why they pick these certain numbers. But based off of a best guess, an educated guess, not any actual data. Because like we said, there's really nothing known about these chemicals. So it's a lot of it is guesswork on how they pick these numbers. But anything they find that is above those levels, they go out a quarter of a mile and test a well. and they go out a quarter of a mile. From every single one that tests above those limits, they keep on going out quarter mile, quarter mile, quarter mile. Until they get to where they don't have any wells anymore to test because they all test under the limits. They haven't reached that point yet, and here it is almost 5 years later. And like I said, it keeps getting bigger. So if a well tests above 140 parts per trillion for GenX specifically, that one chemical called GenX, remember there's GenX and it's part of a larger group called Pfas chemicals. They're holding GenX. I don't know why, maybe because it's when people hear Pfas, they don't register, but when they hear GenX, it registers with them. GenX is kind of like the star of the show. And maybe that's why they hold it in a different category. I'm not sure, but there are other chemicals that are probably just as harmful. I don't know. But if your well tests above 140 parts per trillion for GenX specifically, then Chemours will install a whole house filtration system. And that's installed at the well. And it covers everything that your well covers. If you have a separate well that irrigates like outside, it's not going to cover that. But everything that main well feeds water to, it's going to cover that one. And then they're going to cover the maintenance, changing the tanks, all that kind of stuff for 20 years after that. Now, if you don't reach that 140 parts per trillion GenX mark, but you have one of those chemicals that tests above 10 parts per trillion, or all of those chemicals test combined together are over 70 parts per trillion, then you have 3 under the sink reverse osmosis filtration systems. And you can put those on any 3 sinks you want. The problem with that is, like my house on Fire Department Road that tested at 449 points per trillion total, but I was under 140 GenX, so I only got 3 under the sink reverse osmosis systems. My house had 6 sinks, so I had to choose 3 of them to put them on there.
How expensive are those systems?
Heather, what are we doing? What's happening?
You're talking about the whole house?
No, just the one for the one thing. I've been in a house recently and it had 2, and there were, like you said, more than 2 sinks in the house.
Yeah. Under the sink RO, I think they're around 2,500.
Wow.
Something like that, yeah. I've got some alternatives though here to help out. Give us a second. We're making sure that everyone on Zoom is still with us.
Right here. Okay, all right, good.
All right, let's get that out of the way. Thank you. Okay. Oh, now my thing's not working again.
I got you.
What you do?
I don't know, but I got you
Okay.
somehow. There you go.
Okay. So now, my pointer works. This is actually my house. This is an actual picture of the under the sink reverse osmosis that they put in. They're pretty big. Some people complain because they take up so much room under your sink. I mean, they do, but
In comparison to living.
yeah, I mean, but then again, like we had to choose, like when Emily was upstairs over the garage, we didn't put one on her sink. Fine, whatever.
I don't want to do grandkids.
I'll let the boys handle that.
Oh, God.
Anyways, okay, so this is the granular activated carbon whole house filtration system that they would put in. It's a pretty big system. You've got the carbon tanks that handle it, and then you're gonna have probably 2 or 3 tanks before that that have to filter out iron, lead, and any other solids that you have in there, because if you have iron and lead, you know, gunking up this one, then it's not gonna work right. It's not gonna take the PFAS out for you. So it's more complicated than just putting a filter on there and calling it a day. But it is pretty big. It's probably not gonna fit in your well house that you have right now. So that's another thing. I haven't heard whether Chemours is offering to build people bigger well houses or not.
Last year, I sold a house, to out-of-state buyers. And that guy, I mean, I had to disclose GenX.
Mhm.
He said when he custom built his home, he had the water tested, came back negative. But because he was still so afraid that eventually, for some reason, and he was military, I mean, you could eat off his floor. That filtration system, I've never seen anything like. He dig deep and custom built it himself.
Yeah.
He had
Now,
people-
did he specifically have it tested for PFAS?
He did, and
Okay.
we tested again, just to be on the safe side. You know, because we gave a lot of due diligence money, and I basically said, if it comes back positive, like my buyer bounce, and he signed, because he was so confident. And yeah, thankfully, you know, because
Yeah.
I love the house and everything, but I have never seen such a system. like
Yeah.
ours. It was,
They
he had people who offered him, I think he spent $30,000 in materials, and he really did it himself. Yeah, it was crazy, like,
Yeah.
and he explained it to me on a house, home inspection for 2 hours, and I was like, I don't understand much, but it works great. But no, but I'm saying, like, he explained me how severe it is, and that's why he felt comfortable
Yeah.
doing it.
Now, on that note, you guys gotta keep in mind that a well water test that your lender requires
No, it's
is
not.
not
No,
the
I
same
had a GenX done.
as PFAS test, okay? Your lender, their lender is not gonna require a PFAS test. So if you have somebody say, oh, it was tested when I bought the house, it's no big deal, the water's good. Mm-mm. Now you need to ask more questions. Okay, like I said, don't be fooled by what a seller claims. I've had people tell me that they have whole house reverse osmosis filtration installed. This is what a whole house reverse osmosis filtration system looks like. It would take up half of the garage. Okay, so if you have somebody say they have, you need to be asking questions. You need to find out what. Yeah, you need to find out exactly what these people have. They're not lying to you. Well, for the most part, I mean, some people will, but, you know, but it's just, they don't know. This particular person told me they had reverse osmosis for the whole house, and I was like, are you sure? And I was like, show me. And they went and showed me their 3 under the sink reverse osmosis systems. And they thought that meant whole house. Well, whole house means it's your whole house. If you got 3 under the sink reverse osmosis systems, you're just talking about the water coming out of those sinks. You're not talking about a bathtub, you're not talking about a shower, you're not talking about your washing machine, your dishwasher, your ice maker, anything like that. You're not talking about any of that. So if somebody tells you something like that, you need to be thinking that sounds like a red flag. Because I don't know anybody who's gonna have this in their house.
How much something like that?
I had it priced, it was like $26,000. Is what they told me that it would probably be. Plus, the way reverse osmosis works, if you think back to high school chemistry class and all that kind of stuff, osmosis works by having a certain, help me out here, having a certain concentration of solids moving across this barrier. Are you okay? So in order to keep that concentration high enough for those solids to pass through the barrier, the system has to constantly be flushing water out. Well, that water goes back into your septic system. So it puts about a 40% greater load on your septic system than if you didn't have one, or if you had a different type of filtration. So it's problematic. It's not efficient, it's not practical to have a full house reverse osmosis system like that, unless there's some reason that you've
Well,
got
that's what he
somebody
explained
who's
to me,
super
like, the
anal, but-
systems they're selling, it's not really doing the job all the way it's supposed to, that's why we dig so deep.
Yeah, it does most of it.
Yeah, that's what he said.
It takes probably 98% of everything out, but it's not gonna take 100% like reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis when it's done, it's pure water. You have to re-mineralize it. You have to put stuff back in it so that it doesn't eat up your pipes. Because it's pure water. Pure water will just eat up your pipes. Did you have a question?
I do. So since it's dumping that much more water into your septic system, does it lessen the life of your septic?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know enough about septic tanks to really answer that question, but you're talking about this. This is not practical. We're probably never gonna be dealing with this. I just wanted to put this up here so that you guys know, if somebody tells you they have a whole house reverse osmosis, they don't. They don't.
What are the ones just underneath the sink called, like a partial?
Under the sink, reverse osmosis.
Just under the sink ones?
Yeah, it's reverse osmosis. It's the exact same thing
But only for the sink.
on a smaller scale for only that sink. And the reason that this is so big, if you look at this one, see back here, that's my holding tank. This is what actually filters the water right here. But this is my holding tank. I have to have a 3-gallon holding tank because reverse osmosis doesn't happen in a split second. It takes time for those solids to cross that barrier, or the water to equalize, or whatever the heck it does. It takes time. It's not an automatic thing that happens. So you have to have a holding tank so that you constantly have pressure. Now on this one, since it's a whole house reverse osmosis, you just have to have like huge holding tanks in order for you to constantly have pressure in your house. Does that make sense?
So if you're under the sink ones, you only have a 3-gallon access for those sinks at a time.
Me was 3 gallons.
So if you use more than 3 gallons, you gotta wait.
It's going to, what happens is it just slows down to just really low pressure. It'll still be coming out, but it'll come out at really, really low pressure.
Like
Exactly.
the dishwasher and things, what,
Yeah, you can't hook it up to your dishwasher.
so. get clean
So you have to
drinking
turn
water
your-
Out of a GenX tainted glass, possibly.
So you definitely have to turn the water off when you brush your teeth.
And you only flush when it's,
I'm gonna flush when you have to, okay?
oh my God, yeah,
When it's really bad.
yeah.
I had a question.
Yes,
When you said you can't have it on the dishwasher, would that be the exception would be if you have the whole house?
if you have the whole house, yeah.
Okay, but you're talking about the smaller units.
Yeah,
under the
if you
sink.
have, which, like we said, nobody's gonna have this, because it's just not practical. If you have this one, this doesn't work by any type of holding tank, it's actual filtration going through these tanks. So it's going to lower your pressure. Any type of filtration is going to lower your pressure, but you're still gonna have constant pressure going through that filtration system. So you can use showers and dishwashers and everything else.
So for
But-
those folks that are putting things on their well that are filters, what are they filtering out? Because as you're going over this, you're explaining that in order for them to do all of that scientific stuff that I can't call back to you, you've got to have all the other stuff. So if they're putting filters on a well, what exactly is that gonna be?
You mean, they meaning cameras, or they?
No,
mean
they
just regular?
mean just like
A regular
homeowner.
filtration system.
Yes,
Okay, that's what I was getting to.
sorry.
This is what you'll normally see on a house. Like, I've had a lot of homeowners go, oh, we've already got filtration, it's all good. They have this, they have a water softener system.
Mhm.
It's filtration, but it's not gonna filter out PFAS. There's,
So if I'm an agent going into a house, I see all these tanks. I ask them, they don't really know.
take a picture and send it to me.
Okay, yeah, an agent.
I mean, that's the only thing that I really know to tell you, unless you want to do your research. Ask them if they have some literature, some owner's manual, or any kind of stuff they got when the filtration system was installed. See if you can get any information from them. If there's no information that you can get from them, or they don't have it, or they don't remember, take a picture, send it to me.
Do you know if the home inspectors have received any additional information or training on how to identify what is what?
That's a good question. I don't think so.
It seems like they should in an area that is having this issue.
They probably should, but the problem is, and I'll get into more of that a little bit later, the problem is that everything, like home inspectors are licensed by a state or statewide organization. Appraisers are licensed by a state organization. We are licensed by a state organization. The state organizations aren't taking a stance or an official position on it because it doesn't, it's not affecting the entire state. We'll never see it on a, why am I drawing a blank? You'll never see it on a GenX class because the commission doesn't really even know anything about it. I actually talked to somebody from the commission at length about it this week. They don't know anything about it. She had never heard of it.
But those filtration systems, they need maintenance too, I assume, right?
They do, yeah,
So regardless if you see it or not,
yeah.
I would
Killers-
suggest you have it tested, the water, just to be on the safe side, because I don't care if it's in there or not.
Well,
How do I know it really
I
is?
mean, the lender is going to have it tested for regular water
Correct.
quality. If you've got a PFAS problem, then yes, you, per the consent order, you can go back once a year and have them test your water. They're so backed up right now that that's the problem, is that, we can't get to them fast enough. They can't get to all the testing fast enough. But this is what you'll
The test for
see.
that is so expensive.
It's probably not as expensive as you think. It's like 500,
No, it went up
550.
I was quoted $850.
No, Pillar to Post is doing it around
No, they wanted
550.
$850 on their house. I wanted to have it tested.
Pillar to Post?
Uh-huh.
That's not what they told me a month ago.
No, that's like a few
Not a
weeks,
month
2
ago,
weeks
it was
ago,
$550
$850
probably.
Yeah. But anyway, so this
What are you
is
calling that test? The 850, 450?
PFAS. Yeah, just a PFAS test.
Can you put your cell phone on the report too, please?
Yeah, it's on the slideshow.
At the end.
Okay.
You don't have my number?
I thought I did. Is your husband's name Seth?
No, Seth is my brother-in-law.
I have this one.
Yeah, so I probably gave him your number or gave you his number for irrigation work.
Yeah.
Probably. Anyways, back to the reason why we're here. These are gonna be what you see mostly in homes. If somebody tells you they have filtration. This I've seen a lot. If you see like these little control panels, that's kind of a dead giveaway that it's a softener system. And all that's gonna do is take out iron, lead, stuff like that. It's not gonna handle PFAS at all. It might, I mean, if you really got down to the nitty gritty, it might take some of them out, but it's not designed for that. Do you have a question?
So long-term remediation is for every home to be fitted with 26,000 reverse osmosis.
No. We'll get to that at the end. It's not working. Heather. Okay, so no detection boundaries. This is the new map. This is what's going to kind of blow your mind. Look where we're at now. Last year, we were right here. We were like, right about there-ish. Look how much bigger it's gotten. If you'll go to, if you'll escape out. Minimize.
Yep.
So what did I do?
I don't know.
Make it go away.
Okay. Did you just get rid of?
Okay, so let's zoom in. This is 24. Autryville. This is Sampson County, you guys. It's over into Sampson County. It's crazy. Stedman, this Clement up in here, you know where the Dollar General is in the Clement area? Murphy Road. I do know that there are several on Baywood that have tested above the limit. So this even needs to be out farther this way.
Ooh, is that Kate for high school right there?
It sure is.
The one where we're in it.
What more of them do you have to if we have PWC, does it screen out the PFAS? And she laughed.
That's a complicated answer.
So is it's, water's not safe? Question mark?
No, you should never drink water out of your tap, ever.
It's
good.
found in the drinking water in 49 states. If it's not in PWC probably has it in very small concentrations. They're probably under the limit.
However, there's probably
If-
other things in PWC water that you
Oh,
should be
yeah.
worried about. That's always.
1,4-dioxane. I don't know where Bed and Biscuits is, but it shows up on a Google map pretty well. Bethany, you're all the way over here.
We apologize for
Alternate
anyone who
road.
is getting sick from her
Oh,
moving this
sorry.
so quickly.
Sorry. Highway 24.
That is a lot larger area.
Yeah, a lot larger area. Let me see something I can actually. Yeah, Otterville. There's the town of Otterville. And you're miles outside of Otterville, almost to,
Big swamp.
yeah. This is, yeah, Roseboro, almost to Roseboro. So it's right on the Sampson County line, if not covering the Sampson County line. Any questions about that, or
That's
it's okay. Any questions about that, or did you guys want to see anything specific on that map? Big area now. It's almost down, I would say it is definitely farther down this way. The problem why you're not going to see it expanding much more this way is because Bladen County and Robeson County have county water. There's not as many wells down there. So you're not gonna see it expanding in that direction as much. Same as over in here. It's on, and we'll go into this over here a little bit here in a bit, but you're talking, St. Paul's, Robeson County water all the way up in here. And then you've got this little area that's going into kind of, some people have PWC and some people are still on wells, but it's gonna be slowing down big time over here if it goes any further at all, because most people are gonna be on PWC. The farther we get that way, they're gonna be on PWC.
So does PWC filter out the GenX then?
No,
Because if.
they test for it, but no, they do not filter it out.
Because of what you're saying with the people that are on well water and sewer and the water getting in there and going back to the plant, then that means it could be distributed through PWC.
Yes, but they are testing for it. They're not gonna make that widely known if they found some or not. You're gonna have to dig. But they're testing for it, but everything has been under the limits, except for in July of 2019, when Sanford had that wastewater spike of PFAS. PWC water, drinking water, had a big spike as well. They didn't tell you about that, but they did. But no, they don't have the capabilities to filter it out. Just like down in Wilmington, Leland, New Brunswick County, Hanover County, they don't have the capabilities. They're working on getting the capabilities. They're working out a deal with Kenworth to pay for like a $1 billion water treatment plant, because they've got to do all this crazy stuff to filter it out.
Yeah.
But no, PWC does not have the capabilities to filter it out if something were to happen. I hope they have a plan in place, because the more these chemicals are used, the more you're going to find them in drinking water and in higher concentrations. But I don't know.
Kristen,
Uh-huh.
I texted Paul Holt with Florida Post.
Mhm.
Their test is 550, turnaround is
That's
7 to 10 days.
Yeah, that's what they were telling us a month ago. So this is what I was talking about, that area over towards Hope Mills. Does anybody know where Kentucky Lane is? I think it's in Arlington Plantation.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Okay.
this is something very interesting. Now, the test that Chemours and NCDEQ does for these chemicals, when you go do it, when they come out, take the water sample, give you a test, it only tests for a certain number, 12 or 14 chemicals. It does not test, remember when we were talking about those original chemicals that they were using, PFOA and PFOS? It does not test for those. This is what I found very interesting. Now that Pillar to Post has been doing more testing, we've been finding out a little bit more. But you see how this one, no detection, 32 PFBS. Don't ask me what that is. I have no idea specifically what it is. Just you've got 32 parts per trillion of this PFBS. It's one of the Pfas chemicals. I don't know. You've got 4 here, 5 here, 9 here, 0.65, and they put that J there because it's under the limit. Look at this, PFOS and PFOA, 10 and 11 respectively. And this is outside the testing area as of right now. This is why we've got to get more careful. This is why we've got to get more people aware. We've got to get more people taking it seriously because we are getting crucified, y'all. Next one is 3608 Camson. You know where that is? Over off Stony Point. No detection of anything. Does that make anybody that feels in that area, that lives in that area, feel a little bit better? With me. This one is interesting. I put it on here because when I talk, and this has nothing to do with Pillar to Post. I'm not talking negatively about Pillar to Post. This has nothing to do with them specifically. This has to do with the way stuff is reported, the way results are taken, and the way the report is written. You've got reporting limit right here. The RL means reporting limit, 3.6 nanograms per liter, which is the same as parts per trillion. Sorry, Lisa. You've got 1.8, 0.99, 0.97, 2, 1.5, 3.1, all under the reporting limit. But they're still there. So you might have somebody who had 449 parts per trillion like I did and go, oh, that's nothing. It's nothing comparatively. But then you might have somebody that comes down and they're like, I don't want any of that in my water. It's all gonna have to be the house, the buyer, the well, everything. I mean, it's you've got to know your buyer, you've got to learn to ask the right questions, and you've got to give them the information and let them make their own choice. Because every buyer is going to be different. You're gonna have a buyer like me that's like, I've been dealing with 449 parts per trillion. I'm okay with this. I can live with this. And then you're gonna have a buyer that's like, no, like her client was. But point with that was, Pillar to Post labeled this as a clean sample. The lab, excuse me, not Pillar to Post, the lab labeled this as a clean sample because it was under the reporting limit. So clean doesn't necessarily mean clean. It depends on that particular buyer's definition of clean. Magnolia Church Road in Stedman. Thank you, Ashley. You're welcome. PMPA. 20 parts per trillion. Had a couple of this PFMOA, again, don't know exactly what that is. We've been seeing this PMPA is high in, that's usually the highest number that we have in all of these cases. That's the highest one in mine. This is my house on Fire Department Road. My PMPA was 160. But my GenX right here was only 43, so I didn't reach that 140 parts per trillion mark to get the whole house. But I got 449. It's BS. But anyways, 160 PMPA, almost everything I've seen, the PMPA is the highest number on the results. So I did a little bit, for a long time, we had no idea what PMPA was. And then we figured out that this PMPA, read that word if you want to, I'm not going to, is mutagenic and cytotoxic in salmonella, whatever. Mutagenic just means that it is prone to mutating. Cytotoxic means it's toxic to cells. It causes cell death. We don't know what it does to humans. Have no clues because there's no studies that have been done on humans.
How long has this been an issue here? How many years in Grace Creek? I mean, are you talking 10 years, 20 years? You're talking, well, I was,
Decades.
okay, but has there been any like clusters of cancers or stuff like that showing in these areas?
Yes. A lot of people around Grace Creek complain of, and especially their animals. Lots of tumors in dogs, lots of birth defects in wildlife that people have seen. Deer that are born with like a lopsided head and one eye.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's gross. But the parent compound of PMPA, HMPA, have been shown to reduce male fertility in rats. I think this study was done back in like 1969. The study of HMPA on rats. I believe that was the date on that one. Reduce male fertility in rats and cause lesions in the respiratory tracts of rats. Very little information known about PMPA, not enough to determine if it's a likely carcinogen or not. But you know, that's what I'm saying. We don't know, and people don't trust the unknown. We're seeing that right now with COVID. Nobody trusts anything because everything's unknown. I did find speaking of COVID, I did find a graphic that I didn't include because it was so complicated that I knew I wouldn't be able to really decipher it for you guys, but I read the abstract on the study, and basically what it was saying is that the Pfas, people who have found, and it was a very limited study, we're only talking about like 200 people, very limited study. People who were tested and found Pfas in their blood typically had a harder time fighting COVID. Very limited study. We're not talking about a wide study here, but step out plan. I included this. Was there a question? Sorry. Okay, I included this because there's a lot of people that have asked questions about like, it doesn't make any sense how they're testing, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense until you figure out exactly how they're testing. So they're going and testing 1/4 mile out kind of randomly. If they find a well, like what they're, way up here, this is Sampson County. We've got a couple in Sampson County at this point, Autryville, kind of Stedman area right here. If they find a well, they're stepping out 1/4 mile. That doesn't mean they're testing every well within that 1/4 mile. They're staying within these sectors, these little pie shapes, and picking kind of a random well 1/4 mile out and seeing if it tests. And then they'll go a little bit farther to find one. And if they find one that is above the limit, then they'll go another 1/4 mile out. They're not testing everybody. Then they're going back. And this gray right here is they call it infill testing, where they're working out here to find the boundaries, but they're going back in this gray section within the sectors and filling in all those wells that haven't been. Because there's a lot of wells that have not been tested yet. There's a lot of, who was telling me, somebody was telling me a little while ago that they had somebody in Grace Creek that had no idea. I've never even heard about it. I found that hard to believe, but it's possible. But then again, like right here, I have absolutely no idea why. Because I know there's wells here. There ain't no county water there. I don't know why it stops right there. It's curious. Any questions about this?
Sorry. I stepped out and may have missed it, but is the same thing found in the public water supply as well, or is PWC doing something to filter out?
Probably at very low concentrations, but PWC does not have the capability to filter them out. But down in Wilmington, yes, very high concentrations in their water. Contamination across the country. Will you click that link?
Yes.
Copy and paste.
Yeah.
So what's blue and what's red?
I can't remember. That's why I wanted to click the link. Well, if there's like manufacturing, industrial sites, I believe the blue are manufacturing. Pink or the purple is maybe
Yeah.
If you see at the bottom,
back
because
here.
when you clicked on it, Heather,
Yes.
it said click on, it said something about like open every startup.
Okay.
Open every startup.
Yeah, so click on it again.
It is when you write stuff.
So when they clicked on the link,
Yeah, it doesn't do anything when you click on the link.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Yep.
Hang on, guys. Let's steal that real quick.
Sorry, I was supposed to be much more helpful.
It might come up. Here we go. Okay, so purple is military sites, blue is drinking water, and the orangey red is other known sites. So like, look at North Carolina.
Oh, we're covered.
Yeah, so here's
Mhm.
DuPont right there, DuPont Chemours. And we've got military sites, of course. And up here, there we go. PFOS, 300,000 parts per trillion. That's crazy.
That's not good.
100,000 parts per trillion PFOA. Yeah. I thought that was interesting when I was being all geeky with that map.
Rabbit holes.
Yeah, lots of rabbit holes. So yeah, we're covered. I mean, absolutely covered.
So is there a reason why you've got certain states that are worse than others?
I'm sure there is, but I don't know.
I mean, is it, the only thing I can assume is that we've got the plants that
That's what someone from Pillar proposed when my whole thing went down.
creating
south.
the items that we're using must be located in those areas.
That's what he thought.
I don't know. I'm sure there is a reason, but I don't know.
So
Maybe
we're
that's a
building-
rabbit
we're
hole, I'll
building
go
in Seymour Johnson as well, is that in the public water supply in Seymour Johnson area? Is it on the well?
Not that I'm aware of, but that was groundwater on base. That was just, that 300,000 parts per trillion was just groundwater on the actual Air Force base. That wasn't taken from private wells or anything like that. And this is the main reason, because we are being thrown under the bus daily. We are being crucified on these social media sites. It's ridiculous. I mean, if these ones that I'm going to show you are these were all written in like a 15-minute period on a post just like 3 days ago. And there's hundreds of these comments, hundreds, probably thousands of these comments. I would never bought my home Only 5 years ago, if I knew there was issues with the water, even if it was half the price, especially considering there is no option for city water here, which we won't go into that, but that's not completely true. 5 years ago, yeah, none of us knew about it. 2017 is when the story broke and we first started kind of finding out about this stuff out there. I feel like they might have known beforehand and wasn't told. And I'm almost positive our realtor knew it was happening. Not saying she knew if my house was contaminated, but it was aware that it was an issue in the community. Pretty darn sad, some will do anything to make a dollar. Those are the comments that we get. And that's pretty mild for some of them. I purchased my home in September 2020. If I would have known my land home was in a contaminated area, I would not have bought this house. I received a notice a week after moving in and was angry. The sellers and their family have lived in this area their whole lives, some of which were dealing with contamination on their own property, but nothing was said. I was not from the area and I researched flood zones, etc., and this never came up in searches. I do have city water, but I want to use my 10 acres and now have to worry about my children and animals. Since I am on city water, getting testing done is a pain. I have a real well, but no one wants to test that, and I have to put in an actual well. I don't know what that means, to determine if my land is contaminated. I was told to ask my neighbors, and if they have contaminated wells, then my land is too, but none of the law firms will go off of that. Of course they won't. I spoke to realtors, and from what I gather, no one has to mention the area being contaminated. And since the sellers checked that little box on the form, they can get away with it as well. So all in all, yes, if I had known, I would not have moved here. To be honest, I thought about buying a giant banner to put in my front yard stating this area is contaminated, but was told that unless they test my water and I have proof, they can sue me, so.
A few years ago when this all started coming out, didn't Kemlar's threaten realtors not to mention it because at the time it wasn't a material fact?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh,
I've never heard anything about that.
okay.
And I probably would have told them to stick it where the sun don't shine.
Probably so, because we were told in a nuts and bolts meeting
That's what I thought.
about 4 or
Yeah.
5 years ago by our association, is that it was not a confirmed material fact and not.
See, this is, and I'll get to that more, here later on. But, you know, part of this is true, because
they were telling us that it was not something that we knew for certain, so would we be doing a disservice to the seller by?
Yes,
by
Yeah,
saying
we're
that?
gonna talk in depth.
Okay, all right,
We're gonna talk in depth
Sorry.
about all that. You're fine. So, 47E, I think it's 40, I never remember, General Statute 47, which is based off of the residential property disclosure, is why the residential property disclosure is there. A seller can check no representation on everything, and the seller is off the hook. That doesn't mean that we're off the hook. We still have to disclose. I think it was Amethyst told me that she fired a seller because they told her that they did not want, or maybe they fired her because she told them she wouldn't list it without that disclosure. I mean, she did the right thing. There's no amount of money worth losing your license and your livelihood over. And then giving all of us a bad name, like some of these people are doing, going into this area selling houses, whether they're doing it being neglectful or they're doing it just because they're so focused on making sale after sale after sale that they're not going to classes, they're not reading articles, they're not doing that. Just as bad, in my opinion. If you're gonna sell in a certain area, you better know what you're talking about going into that area, because it's going to get you in trouble. One of these days, it's going to get you in trouble, gonna catch up to you.
Had a triangle agent listing something out in Grace Creek, and
Mhm.
we wanted to know what all this fuss was about something called GenX crap.
Yeah. Everyone should get these signs. This backstory, this message was about a sign that some of the people on the Facebook page have made. Are you on the Facebook page? Do you know what I'm talking about? So yeah, everyone should get these signs and post them right beside any for sale signs in your neighborhood. The realtors would poop their pants when they pulled up to the house with that sitting in the lawn. I mean, this is what people think about us, you guys. Because we're not making it as much of a big deal as it needs to be. The commission has not, the reason that I called the commission to talk to them this week was I wanted to know if anybody was making complaints as far as non-disclosure of GenX. They don't have a way, unfortunately, they don't have a way to filter through the complaints to find out. But the lady that I talked to, she didn't even know it was going on. She had no idea about it. But if a complaint has not been made, it's only a matter of time before people are going to start making complaints on us. And you better be daggone sure that you can defend yourself when you go in front of the board. If you sold a house, I mean, you better make sure you've done things right.
What Facebook group is that?
It is called
I'll look it up.
Grace Creek Residents United Against GenX and Pfas in our wells and rivers. Yeah, that's why it took me a minute. It's,
Something United.
yeah, if you
United
just put in
Against
Grace Creek Residents United, it'll come up.
Grace Creek Residents United.
Yeah. Okay, so Realtor Basics, you've probably all seen this before if you've been through the class. Disclosure, disclosure, disclosure. NCI is caveat emptor, buyer beware, but that does not mean that you still cannot get it. Just because it's buyer beware, if you're the listing agent, you can still get in trouble if you don't do everything right. If you're the buyer's agent and you sent, I mean, you've seen that guy bought his house in September of 2020. It wasn't disclosed to him. I don't know who his agent was, but it wasn't disclosed to him apparently. Or if, you know, if you look back, it's very possible that he probably signed that disclosure, but he didn't pay any attention to it and his agent did not explain it to him. His agent did not talk to him about it at all. Now, it gets into a really, really sticky situation. And here's where I've changed. I'm getting into where I have changed my recommendations a little bit because we've got to work together and keep each other safe on this. We all know new construction is exempt from the residential property disclosure. So nothing's going to be on that. Of course, the builder and the builder's rep's not going to say anything about it. They're going to say, oh, well, we put filtration in. It's not going to be Pfas filtration. It's just going to be for like iron and lead, stuff like that, to make sure it passes the lender's well water quality test.
There's gonna be a disclosure in their paperwork too.
Yeah.
I went knocking on neighbors' doors that were already in the neighborhood from construction.
Yeah.
To see if their water was tested.
Probably half of them didn't know about it.
No, they did.
They did?
Yeah.
Good. So this is our GenX Pfas disclosure. In the beginning, we had a very, very basic one. It looked a little bit different than this. They've since updated it, made it look a little bit more professional, all that stuff. But it basically says like, okay, this home is in an area that may be contaminated. Click on those sites and do your work. Now, this is where it gets really, really tricky because like she was saying 4 or 5 years ago, our association was saying it's not a material fact. Well, at this point, it's a material fact. It is 100% a material fact. I don't care what the association says. I mean, they might get mad at me, but it's 100% a material fact. NC Realtors, Zan Monroe and myself got together and put this together for us so that we had it. Our attorneys that are on retainer, the people that you email at the legal hotline or call at the legal hotline, those are our attorneys that are on retainer. They have not been very open-lipped about it because what they're saying, based on North Carolina law, with it being caveat emptor, with the residential property disclosure, the seller's able to write no representation, all that kind of stuff. You can get in trouble if you don't disclose, but you can also get in trouble if you disclose too much. Because you might be doing a disservice to your seller and you might be considered guilty of steering under fair housing guidelines.
I'll take that chance.
North Carolina General Rule Statute 47E should be disclosed immediately. That is their official position. Disclose, send them the third-party information, and let the buyer do the research on their own. this market that we're in, buyers don't have time to do research before they make an offer. There's no buyer, especially in Grace Creek and those areas. They don't have time to do any research before they make an offer. And if they do, they're thinking of a million different things. If you have them sign that disclosure, you've got to determine what is best for you, what you're comfortable with. But whatever it is, make sure that you can defend yourself if you go in front of the commission. Because that's all it boils down to. Yes, you want to protect your buyer. That's great. I want you to protect your buyer too. I want to protect my buyers too. But I can't feed my kids if I lose my license. You better be sure that you can defend yourself if you go in front of the commission on this. Fair housing guideline brochure talking about steering is right here. That's what our attorneys are worried about, is they're worried about agents being guilty of steering because of this. Some agents won't even show homes in Grace Creek and the area because of it, which is like, I mean,
as long as you say this area could be potentially be exposed to GenX.
right, but it better be in writing.
Right, I mean, if they wanna see a house there.
Getting that disclosure sign is what's gonna protect you.
So let's say if they wanna see this house and it's in Grace Creek. And you could say, well, I'll show it to you, but just so you know, this area could be, do I say it like that, or do I just, here's a pamphlet?
Yeah, I mean, you can say it however you want, just make sure that you're comfortable with it.
Everyone's hard on well water, but with us being unsure that it's not in the drink water, don't you need that disclosure blanketed across every transaction?
Well, we're getting to that, not necessarily, because we do know that it is not, if it's in PWC, it is not in high enough concentrations to,
But it's what
well,
PWC.
again, depending on who you're talking to.
Right, and
If somebody
PW
wants pure water, if you're worried about PWC water, then you need to go to the PWC website
Right.
and look up what it tests for, because it tests for a whole bunch of other stuff.
So we need to disclose that too. They need to check PWC.
well, PWC,
I mean,
And where's
so-
it in?
PWC is regulated and
Yes.
wells are not. So I think that that's where it's coming from, is that the PWC, anything that's coming, PWC, Aqua, any of those are regulated by some entity.
Yeah.
And wells are not.
and it's a public utility, and every single well is going to be different. You saw all those results pages I had up there. Every single well is different. You can have wells 10 feet apart, and one test positive above the limit and one test below the limit. Or one test no detection at all and one test above the limit.
So the one that you pulled up
Because they're-
from Magnolia Church that she had, I have one that closed, you'd have to pass that house to get to the one on Magnolia Church. And they
No
tested.
detection, yeah. I mean, it's, every single well is gonna be different. PWC water, you're getting the same water, no matter what's in it, you're getting the exact same water coming out of every spigot that serves PWC. Well water is different, so that's why it's kind of on a different disclosure standpoint, if that makes sense. I'm not arguing again, Heather.
I was just trying to check and see if we had any chats.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Right, there you go.
And we will, Heather, remind me,
Yes.
to check the chats, because I saw some comments there. I wanna make sure we're not missing
They were
any
before,
questions.
you're
Okay. So this is my recommendations. I wanna make it very clear. The slide before, the two slides before were from NC Realtors and your local association, okay? That is what they are telling you to do. So if you wanna go, who's this Kristen chick? I'm not listening to her. Then you better go, just go by those two and just disclose and not say anything else, okay? This is my recommendations because I'm in it every day. I've gone down every rabbit hole I can find and they keep sucking me in. Number one, when you get a listing that's anywhere near that area, we saw, remember that interactive map that we zoomed in on? That is an unofficial map. You cannot use that as a oh, this home is on the outside, I don't need to worry about it. You cannot use it like that, okay? We update it when we can, or rather Mike updates it when he can, but it's not always accurate, you cannot go by that. If you're anywhere close to that area, you need to ask, has your well been tested? Have you had filtration installed? If the seller says no, check the map, see how close they are to the affected area, or call me. Seriously, guys, you can call me, text me, Facebook message me anytime. Anybody who knows me in this room will tell you the same thing. I'll answer questions about this any day. Jackie calls me all the time.
I think Facebook was right.
Yes, I think you
That's
did.
why I don't have to.
And they may be one of those people who live under a rock and haven't heard about it or haven't been contacted about testing, and they don't know that they can reach out and be asked to be tested.
I have a question for you. Because
Yes.
it says you obtain a copy of well result from either Chambers or NCDQ.
Mhm.
I mean, because I'm a friend and they bought couple years ago, huge farmhouse land. And, they were notified after the sale, had the water tested through Chambers. Do we really can't believe Chambers results? I mean, I'm
Yes,
honestly.
because they're done by third-party labs
Independent.
that are approved by DEQ. They're done, the water samples are taken by third parties and the lab results are done by third parties. So yeah, I think we can,
Okay.
I think those are reliable. So if the seller says no, check and then just go over it. Say, hey, you're really close to this area. You may want to think about getting tested. If not, we may want to put a disclosure on the listing. And you have to be the one to decide. If the seller says, no, I don't want it to be tested, you have to be the one to decide if you're going to put a disclosure on there or not in your remarks. And you have to feel comfortable with it.
So let me ask you this, so I could say seller did not want it water tested or something?
I wouldn't say that, no. Don't say anything that's gonna be a disservice to
I
your
know.
seller, but don't say that, just say, if you wanna put something on there, my recommendation is to say, home may be in an area that may be affected by GenX Pfas contamination. Well has not been tested, no results on file. Leave it at that.
But then basically just on the agent remarks or public?
Public. I would put it in public. If you can get a copy of the results, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to get in touch with Chemours and DEQ. If you have a really bad problem, I have a direct contact at Chemours, the third party that's handling the testing, and I've been sworn to secrecy on her name and contact information. But if you want to ask me about a certain address, I will reach out to her and get those results for you.
You are Miriam Aaron Brockovich.
I don't know.
I think it is.
I don't dress as slutty if she does.
It's a cowgirl version, there you go.
If they have filtration installed, like we talked about, obtain a copy of the owner's manual, model number, whatever you can get, anything you can get. If they remember the company that installed it, if there's a label on it, take a picture of the label, do some research. If there's an owner's manual, take some shots of those, whatever you can get. Find out and figure out exactly what type of filtration is installed. Don't go by what the seller says, because sellers just, not that most of them are being, are purposefully misleading. They just don't know any better. They think, oh, I've got filtration, cool, whatever. And think they're all good. Remember, all filtration is not equal. This is something I've kind of changed up that I think I'm gonna start doing. Require the buyer's agent to submit a buyer-signed GenX disclosure with all offers. That way, you as a listing agent know that it has been disclosed to the buyer. And you don't have to worry about it from here on out.
On key release or whatever, slide it into
Yep.
your paperclip.
Yep,
Good idea.
yep.
I mean, it would be helpful on the back end of it, because then there would be no ability for a buyer's agent to come to you and be like,
Yep.
oh, well, they didn't know that, now they want to terminate.
Yep.
You would do that for just about any house in that affected area, like even across the river in the Cape Fear
But only if they
area.
have wells, correct?
Not necessarily, no, we'll get to that. I've got one that's getting ready to, come back on the market tonight. And, it tested below the limit. But I'm still gonna have, in the agent remarks section, I'm still gonna ask all offers to be submitted with the disclosure, fire sign disclosure. Cause I don't want that liability. I don't want there to be any possibility that that buyer gets to closing and does not know about it. And I'm still, in the public remarks, I'm still gonna say, home is in an area that may be affected by GenX Pfas, affected by GenX Pfas. Well tested below the limit, results on file. Third, with a guest house.
We'll talk later.
Avoid using polarizing language in property descriptions. Do not use the word contaminated or dirty or anything like that. Does your seller a disservice. And that's where you can get in trouble. If your seller says, I do not want this disclosed, tell them, I'm sorry, you are more than welcome to choose no representation on the residential property disclosure, but my license law says that I have a duty to disclose it. I have to. Period. Put it off on the commission. Don't say, I mean, you don't even have to say, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Put it off on the commission. My license law says that I have to disclose this. I'm sorry, I can't list it any other way. Shut them up right then. Okay, I'm not working again, Heather. Okay. Thank you. Okay, buyers. Again, this is Kristen's recommendations, not anybody else's. Buyers, get the disclosure signed immediately if they are even thinking about a house in or around that area. Ask questions and listen for key terms and phrases. You have to know your buyers. I know we're all busy and you sometimes you get that buyer that's like, oh, I found this house. Hi Lisa, nice to meet you. Hey, I found a house and I really love it. I drove past it. I want to go see it. I'm ready to write an offer on it. You still have to get to know your clients and know what is important to them. Have they mentioned anything about backyard gardening? Have they mentioned anything about composting, grapevines, fruit trees, having animals, anything like that? If so, that should be a big red flag. Because even if they're in Cypress Lakes and they're on PWC, they can't grow a backyard garden without their vegetables and fruits being contaminated with Pfas. Because it's in the soil. Remember we talked about it came through the air, deposited on the ground, and that's how it gets down in the groundwater to our wells. It's in the soil, and especially in what we found in a lot of plants and vegetables and honey. You wouldn't believe something like 40,000 parts per trillion in honey around Grace Creek. I would love to have some local honey because my kids' allergies, heck no. I ain't touching the local honey around my house. No, Anyways, if that's something that's important to them, then even if they're on PWC, they need to be aware of it. Because even if they're on PWC, just like that guy who bought in September 2020, he's not on a well. His house isn't on a well. He has a well for irrigation purposes, but he can't grow anything on his land without worrying about it being contaminated. What about his dog? Like my dogs have always drank bottled water since all of this. I had a dog die in February of 2020, last year. His kidneys and liver failed him big time. He was 13 years old. It could have been just old age, but could it have been because he was drinking GenX water for a few years before we found out about this? I don't know, possibly. But that's gonna matter to a lot of people. Who was it in one of these classes, Heather, that she doesn't even live anywhere near this, but she feeds her cat bottled water because
I don't remember who it was, but I
yeah,
remember.
somebody here at KW feeds their cat bottled water because they're so
so worried about
Yeah.
making sure their animals get everything perfectly healthy and nothing hurts them, which is, I'm not one of those people, but there are people like that out there.
So you were talking about the wastewater treatment plants and stuff
Yes.
like that. I live in Rayford, and
Uh-huh.
I live like maybe a mile and a half from the Rayford wastewater treatment plant, like it actually backs up to public. Rockfish Creek runs to the back of my property, all that kind of stuff.
But your water is not taken out of Rockfish Creek.
No, it's Rayford city water, whatever, but we are close enough that we can actually smell the wastewater, but it's a little bit of blows sort of kind of thing. With the whole contamination of the rain and the wind and everything like that, is there any possibility from your research that it could move more towards that way, possibly more towards Rayford, because that was kind of getting close.
There's always a possibility, I can't say never, but looking at like, Campson, the house on Campson had no detection of anything. So probably not, but we can't ever say. no,
Right, I mean,
never.
it's basically moving more towards like the Fayetteville, towards the coast, not as
Well,
much.
it's, think about the way the weather and the wind
Right.
blows. That's why it's pushing everything up towards Stedman, Entreville, Roseboro, because that's the way the wind blows.
But then you had the stuff in Sanford, I saw the house outside of Pinehurst.
Well, Sanford, we have no idea where that was coming
So
from.
that could
We
be
still don't know where that big spike came from. They haven't had a spike like that since then.
Something got in there. That was,
Yeah, I don't know. Nikki, do you have a question?
Oh, no, I was just saying that there's a lot of mineral content in the water from the city water that affects cats in this area.
Okay.
So a lot of.
Yeah.
people use water.
Yeah. So if you've got a buyer client that is really into their pets and, then they might wanna know about it, because even if they say, even if you're thinking, well, okay, they can just go bottled water, well, it rains. I mean, what if their dog gets out there and drinks out of a puddle in the backyard or something like that, or sits under a bush and gets rained on or something like that, which I don't know who like really loves their dog that would leave them out in the rain, but you just gotta be thinking about all those kind of things. Because it matters to people, even if it doesn't matter that much to you, it's gonna matter to somebody else. That's why you have to ask those questions and get to know your clients. Swimming pool, I have a swimming pool. At this point, I'm not willing to give up my swimming pool. But I've lived with 449 parts per trillion. I go back and shower.
in it, right?
Well, yeah, I'm not.
I just want to go in.
I'm not showering in it, but, I
Yeah, but you shower in your house.
I have some other filters.
Oh, you have extra
Yeah.
things to shower, okay.
But I don't have anything that filters out the water that goes in my swimming pool, and if you have a swimming pool, you have to put water in it about once a week because of evaporation in the summertime. So even if you fill it up initially with outside water, you're still gonna be replenishing it with water from your well, and that's gonna matter to people.
And rainwater.
Yeah, rainwater, they talk about wanting a pool, or maybe putting a pool in later or something like that, you gotta know these things. Only share additional information, additional beyond the disclosures that you are comfortable with sharing. You can always call or text me with questions, I'm serious, guys, always call or text me. So what can a buyer do? Get asked this question a lot, what can a buyer do? Because there's no time for research before submitting an offer. They can have their own well water testing completed. Pillar to Post does it. We said $550. They can be back with it when 7 to 10 days. Microbac does it as well. I don't know their prices. I think they're a little bit longer on their turnaround time. But Pillar to Post is the only other one that I know of in this area that's doing it. And of course, if you don't know Paul and all them, Paul and them are great. Just call them.
Okay, so question.
Yes.
Okay, question on going back to that previous slide. So not having time for research and submitting an offer in the market, got that. You're looking at that residential property disclosure. Seller says no representation. Granted, we are able to, as sellers, they are able to do that. You go under contract, you've got an enormous amount of due diligence money. It comes back that it is GenX and that they were aware that there were Pfas in GenX. Would you be able to terminate and get due diligence money back with it having been a material fact that they do know?
No.
You have to prove it that they knew.
Well, I mean, if you've got.
Even if they knew, even if the seller knew, the seller has chosen no representation.
So the seller's off the hook. We are a buyer beware state.
Okay.
It is on, the obligation is on the buyer. I wrote a whole blog post about this. I've done a whole lot of research on it.
Okay.
Talked to Will Martin a lot about it.
Okay.
Buyer beware. It is on the buyer to
Well-
discover material facts.
Well, but that's why when I've had this $500,000 house under contract, I said, if the water comes back, we get due diligence, and the seller said it's for more than fine.
Yeah.
It's not having a problem with that. You have to, and if he doesn't wanna sign it, then it's really up to your buyer if they wanna
Correct.
move
Yeah.
forward, and if they do wanna move forward, hey, you guys know.
Let
Right.
me clarify that. It's on the buyer to discover latent material facts. Any known material facts should be disclosed by the listing agent, should be disclosed by the seller, but you can't prove that the seller didn't know it if they didn't say anything about it.
Okay.
But
So,
it's on the buyer, always. It's the buyer's obligation to discover and uncover latent material facts, period.
define latent for us really quick,
Uh,
not being funny.
unknown.
Okay.
But if you're a buyer's agent and it's around that area, then you better be asking questions
Okay.
to the listing agent if it's
And-
not disclosed on the listing.
And listing agent says, I spoke to my seller and my seller was not aware of anything.
Then that's all you can go by.
Okay.
That's
And
all you
then
can
we,
go by.
and then
You
we
say
find
to your
out
buyer,
later that they are aware of it.
they're not gonna have anything to go on because you're gonna go back to your buyer and say, look, here's the deal. This home is in an area that may be affected by GenX Pfas contamination. The listing side is saying that they don't know anything about it, but they don't have any results. They haven't come up with any proof. They haven't produced any proof, any documentation saying that their well is not a detect well.
Okay.
Then your buyer has to make the decision on whether they want to go forward and put down that due diligence money. If they decide that they want to go forward and put down their due diligence money, too bad, so sad. They got to deal with I mean, it sucks. It does suck, but that's how the law's written.
And some buyers will move forward,
Mhm.
like
Yes.
grandchildren live in a house that, the parents decided that, they didn't care as long as they could stay in Grace Creek.
Yep.
High school.
Yep.
They didn't care.
And there's a lot of people who
Who don't
want to
know.
be in Grace Creek and
Yeah.
want to be in Cedar
Right.
Creek that much that they just want to go forward with it no matter what. They want to be in that school system or whatever.
Or getting sick or something, and then it's like, yeah, I
And
don't
then they
remember
change their
that.
mind, but
Yeah.
that's why we have the disclosure, that's why you have to have at least somewhat of conversation with your buyer. And if your buyer's choice is to move forward, then that's on them.
Right.
It has to be. And no, due diligence is never refundable, not even
Well,
for
but like
that.
I said, or you write an initial provisions, must the seller sign it?
I was gonna say additional provisions addendum with that.
Well, that's
Just
what I brought up, and the
particularly like
seller
just
signed
for the
it.
water test.
Yeah,
Well, I said, basically, it's
I
saying
know,
if
but I don't know
if
if
the
someone
water
that's
test
gonna
came
sign
back
something like
positive
that
for
in
GenX
the
and a P for whatever, a seller to return the
Maybe
due
3
diligence
years ago,
fee
but-
to, no, it was last year, seller to return it, but that was the one with the filtration system, so he was very confident it's going through.
Yeah, because in this market now, the seller's just gonna go, yeah, whatever.
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
yeah,
Exactly. So, what else can a buyer do? A buyer, if they wanna go forward with it, if they discover that they don't like the well results and they don't wanna lose their due diligence money, they can have their own filtration system installed. If they don't think the 3 under the sink reverse osmosis is good enough for them, they can have their own whole house filtration system installed. A lot of people have done it out in Grace Creek and Cedar Creek. Connecticut, I've priced from $7,500 to $10,000. We can't get an actual price on it because remember what I talked about? You might have to have an iron or a lead filter or something else on there in order to not junk up your carbon filters. It depends, every single well is different. So every single well is gonna have different pre-filters in order to condition the water for the carbon filters. Does that make sense? So every system is gonna be a little bit different based on what is in that water.
Can I ask a question? Very quick?
Yeah.
No. The appraisers
Mhm.
in Grace Creek, do they look for that? Because it is an issue.
Yes and no. There was an appraiser, I don't know, a year and a half ago that put one on an appraisal. And the lender pushed back, and got them to take it off.
The appraisal board has talked a lot about it, but it's like North Carolina real estate licensing. They're not taking a stance on it because it's not a statewide issue.
Wow.
It's crazy.
One other quick question.
Yes.
Is PWC or any, depending who's servicing the area, are there plans to basically get those homes that are on well water eventually to city water? Or like, you know,
Yes and no.
It is taking us.
They set aside $10 million to put in water just out to, the 2 schools that tested above the limit.
Okay.
They have not started, they haven't started any of the process. The money's just sitting in an account. Money's just sitting in the fund there. I have no idea what's the holdup, what they're waiting on. They haven't started any of it yet. They have done a whole lot of studies. They've engaged some kind of engineering firm to see about the feasibility. But there are a lot of problems in the logistics of getting water out there to Grace Creek, which we don't have time to go into right now.
No, I was
Very
just wondering,
complicated,
you know.
But yes, there has been talk about it, but nothing done yet. Yes,
What were the 2 schools?
Grace Creek and Alderman Road.
Grace Creek.
Elementary.
Middle,
Elementary.
high school, elementary.
Alderman Road. The middle school and high school are on public water.
Okay.
That's where it stops, is right past the high school. Okay, so Connecticut is not the only filtration company that can install this system, but if you've got a buyer that is installing something from another company, they need to make sure that they do their homework on it. They need to make sure they know what they're getting. And if it were my buyer, I would tell them, okay, fine, you wanna have this company install it? That's great, they say they can do it. Make sure you get it in writing that this company is going to test your water and prove that it is PFAS free after they install the system. Have that company pay for it. There's no reason, if you're spending $7,500, $10,000 on a filtration system, there's no reason that that company should not pay for testing after they install it. Period. So also, what can a buyer do? These are the filters that I have in my house that I supplement everything with. And yes, I did put one on Emily's. They have tested really, really well. I'm not getting paid by them or anything, but they have tested really, really well by the Pfas testing network, which consists of NC State, UNC Chapel Hill, Duke, UNC Charlotte, UNC Wilmington, ECU, and North Carolina Ag and Tech. They've done really well. Now, some of these, some of these, if you notice, like the Brita pitcher went from 1 to 0.9. It didn't filter out anything. Nothing. Puronics whole house GAC didn't do very well. That's why I'm saying not all systems are created equal. This is labeled GAC or granular activated carbon. They're calling this a granular activated carbon. It is a granular activated carbon, but not the right kind of granular activated carbon that is needed to filter out the PFAS. It went from 52 to 42. Not very well. Berkey pitcher did a little bit better. Zero water did okay. Some of these, somewhere it was actually went up because of saturation. Right here, I think. The refrigerator filter went up. I can't read that number. Can y'all read that number? I think that says like 15.4. It went from 12 to 15.4. It actually went up.
Yeah, it's 12 to
After-
15.4.
Filtration. So, and the reason for that is probably because of saturation. Once a filter gets too saturated, it's not going to filter out anything. It's actually going to be making your water dirtier. So if you use a Brita pitcher filter thingy and you don't change the filter like you're supposed to, it's actually going to make your water dirtier after that filter has gone past its life. The HydroVive link is right here, and on that page is a link to the NC State study on filtration, so you can see all the filters for yourself if you want to. If they really wanna be in Grace Creek or Cedar Creek or Stedman or wherever, and gardening is a big thing for them. And it's a hang up, cause it is gonna be for some people, mention raised bed gardening. See if they wanna do that, a whole lot of people do that, my mom, this is not a picture of my mom's house, but this could be. My mom's got a ton of these stock tanks with her tomatoes and zucchini and squash and everything, and it works great. This is a kit that you can buy from Lowe's to have a raised bed garden. You can build your own. You can do all kinds of things if that's what the buyer wants to do. So it's something that you could mention for a buyer that is hung up on this, but still wants to be in the area. Install a deeper well. Now, remember, this may be an option, but it is not in any way a foolproof option. Charlene Cook lives right next to the plant. Like, she literally, her property line is right alongside the plant's property line.
Above it. No.
Yes, north of it, on the Cumberland County, she's right on the river, right there next to it. She has a 405-foot deep well that they put in. It costs a buttload of money to put in. She has no detection of anything, which is awesome, but you gotta keep in mind that the high cost of putting a well in, plus when you go down to a deeper well, the reason we have more shallow wells around here, most of our wells are only like 20, 30 feet deep. They're not very deep at all around here. And that's why we have such high iron content in the water, in the well water, is because it's not very deep and just that water has a lot of iron in it. You go deeper, you take the risk of having stagnant water, bacteria, other types of solids that need to be filtered out. So you might have to have filters put on even after you dig a deeper well. So it's all, my point with this is it's all gonna depend on what makes sense to the buyer. You can give them some options if they really wanna be in one of these areas, but it's gotta be what makes sense to them. But I'm putting this up here so that you as their agents can know what kind of options to give them. Also, another thing to remember with a deeper well is that we have no idea how fast these chemicals are leaching through the soil. So it could be hundreds of years before the chemicals get down to 405 feet. Or it could be 30 years. We have no idea. So this is all stuff you have to take into consideration, the buyer has to take into consideration. You also have to talk about elevation. Charlene is right there at the river. So her 405-foot depth, somebody who's 100 foot above the river is gonna be at 505-foot depth in order to get at the same level as Charlene is. Does that make sense? Because you're 100 feet higher, you gotta go 100 feet deeper in order to get to that same level. Okay, we're finally at the end. More questions?
So one thing about this,
Let's put it back on the chat.
I just checked it.
Okay.
Oh,
We'll put it
well, I
back on
guess
there
I
in
did
case
check it,
anybody else
okay,
does.
yeah. So for those folks at home who use nonstick cookware,
Throw it away.
throw it away, get your mom's cast iron skillet. Season it real good, it won't stick.
I mean, there are PFAS free coatings.
Yes.
Some ceramic coatings, anodized aluminum, I think is what one of them is called, but just look when you're buying stuff, look and make sure it's PFAS free.
Use butter.
Hmm?
I said use butter.
Well, yeah. Yeah, that's one way to just get past it, but yes. I am kind of partial to mine, non-stick pans. Do you have the chat up?
There's no chat. There's no.
Oh, okay, I see, yeah. Is any,
Are there any questions for those of you in Zoom land?
is there people still in Zoom land?
There's 10.
Oh, wow, cool. I know somebody has questions.
Just about your phone number, so I can send you pictures of these things. Are out there.
Okay.
And they say they're a filtration system.
You're welcome, Jennifer. Did I? Click to the next, slide, if you will. Oh, no, I didn't. I meant to put my phone number on there, but I'm not hard to find. I'm really not hard to find.
Your phone number on that one?
No, I forgot. I did bad. Did bad, Lisa.
Okay.
I can't type.
Want to put on dry erase board?
Sure. Yeah, I can do that.
So,
And
everybody
everybody in,
doesn't recognize all of this, and how do we, how do we get the word out to all these other agents that are oblivious?
Bring it up to your broker in charge.
yeah,
Make sure your broker in charge is.
Yeah, well, that's me, and that's only me, so I'm not affecting a whole lot here.
I've asked myself that question, and that's why I started doing the class, because it, because our association is not, they're not bad people, okay? That's not why they're not taking more of a stance on this. That is not it at all. The problem is because there's legal ramifications that they're going to have if they take a stance on something that is kind of not 100% proven, and is not, there's no, like we talked about every, I'll give it to you, your friends with me on Facebook, it's all on Facebook page, I promise. Every buyer is different, every house is different, every well is different. You cannot apply a rule, really other than the disclosure, you can't apply a rule across the board because every single one is different. Every single situation you come across in regards to this issue is going to be completely different.
But every agent outside of our MLS, and we do know that there's a lot of them that, come this way, they have no idea about a disclosure, because that's specific to us here.
I'm doing what I can.
Yeah, that's what I
Well,
was
what
thinking.
they should do and what they do.
Well,
I will
that's their
go-
license.
I will go anywhere and teach this class. I've been to Moore County. Moore County invited me over, well, Moore County, Keller Williams invited me over, and I did the class for them, I don't know, maybe 2 summers ago. I will go anywhere and teach this class, because I am tired of seeing those comments on the Facebook page. I'm so tired of it. And when people it's kind of like everything going on in this country and in this world right now. People are so fearful and people are so up in their emotions about it. That's exactly how they've been for the last 5 years with this GenX Pfas contamination. So up in their emotions that they can't just sit down and have just a calm conversation and actually listen to somebody saying, hey, look, there are bad police officers, there are bad realtors, there are bad doctors, there are bad attorneys, but there's also a lot of good police officers and a lot of good realtors and a lot of good doctors and whatever else, There's good and bad everywhere, and they don't want to see it. So we need to get together, get the word out, and minimize those people
How
who
do
are,
we reach builders?
I don't know if we can.
I don't
I've talked to
know
them.
that we answered, I don't know if we answered his question back there. Because he represents a lot of the builders.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, in
Okay.
Grace,
I don't know.
Stedman area, so this is all, probably pretty new to them.
Yeah,
As far as the ones that they're building out there, and I know all the builders have their disclosures, but
Yeah.
H&H, slaps the
but it's up
filtration
to,
system and.
it's up to
100-foot
each.
well, and everybody thinks they're safe.
Yeah, well, I don't even know what builder would spend money to put in 100-foot well when they can put in a 30-foot well.
H&H was out there at the Roslyn.
They do?
Yep.
Hmm.
Yep, they put in the 100-foot well, they put in the well house, they put in
I
the
didn't know that.
filtration system.
So they're putting in 100-foot wells in passing that off is,
Good to go,
okay.
good to go with a
Okay.
100-foot well.
Well, now you guys know. I
And
mean,
they have their little disclosure in their paperwork, you know.
yeah, we can't fix every problem.
Yeah.
We can't, but we just gotta do better as a group. And like I said, I would teach this class as many times as it takes. And hope that people come.
And talking with each other.
Yeah. And seriously, call me, text me.
That's a whole other
That's all
time
the
to brokers, and maybe they will invite you. Because brokers always looking for.
I can't
something.
promise I'll answer, but text me because my voice note doesn't always work.
Is this number gonna be on that, stuff you're going to send out?
Yes. Yeah, I'll email it, it's all in my email signature and everything. And yes, I mean, Lisa's texting me, Jackie texts me all the time about it. I got a whole bunch of people that I
I'll
have
talk to you about it.
conversations with. Yeah,
Facebook Messenger.
yeah,
Where to find
yeah, we talked about it. Karen had really good questions. There's Jackie! Karen had good questions in the last one I did. You answered them all. What are you doing here? I was just telling them you text me all the time about GenX
And I would
questions.
be here, but I'm literally came here just to get ready for the kids' piece off.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell us a quick blurb, because you still have 10 people on here. So
Yeah.
tell us really quick, what's going on in a
Well,
few minutes,
second,
Jackie?
So tonight is our annual Kids Piece auction at Dirtbags. You do not need a ticket to come. There's silent auction pieces, there's live auction pieces, and what we do is we take jacked up, nasty, old pieces of furniture from around town and we give it to local artists. They do up the pieces and they make them beautiful, so that's how a lot of people kind of view our kids who've been troubled and had all these situations, and a lot of people don't know what to do with them. And our foster families take them in and let them know that they can be everything that they're capable of being. So it's kind of a representation, and then we raise all the money, and all the money goes towards our local Kids Peace Fayetteville office. And I have been treasurer on the board. I've been on the board for 7 years, and I will tell you, we are OCD with the money, and none of it goes to people's salaries or franchise fees or anything like that. It literally goes towards the kids. So if they need some extra help, or they want to apply for college, or a lot of times when they're pulled out of their houses, all they have is the clothes on their back. So we use some of those funds to get them clothes or mattresses for a bed, different things like that. So if anybody wants to come and learn more about Kids Piece and see some of the beautiful pieces, I would love to have you. Starts at 5:30, auction is live at 6 o'clock. And it's at Dirtbags, so come casual, do whatever.
or?
Yeah, we're having it outside in the pavilion, so the weather is beautiful. There'll be the food trucks there. They just opened their dirty whiskey bar, so you can do that. You can try their beer on taps. They have wine, they have non-alcoholic stuff, they have everything. So it's come, have a great time. The silent auction is gonna be in the main facility, and we have live TVs around showing you what's going on in the auction. So if you know what piece, if you do want to bid on one, you'll be able to see what's coming out. So, yeah, but come on out. I'd love to see all your beautiful faces. And I miss you, and I'm sorry I couldn't be here because I do call you all the time.
I was just telling you, they're like, Kristen's gonna kill me for not being there, but I did tell her about the auction. You told me.
So I love you and thank you.
Love you too.
See you soon.
Bye, sparkly.
Any other questions?
No questions in the chat.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
if you need help, call me, seriously.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
I'll go over to Jackson, because I was kind of like.
Thank you. You're welcome. What was your name?
Tendency, and it's your next choice.
Okay, I'm noticing people, I know these are your two, right? And then what was your name? Okay, yes, I know your name. I definitely know your name. Yeah, you were on that tape.
Yes.
I saw you, I was like, get it, girl. Okay.
Thanks, Chris.